He's not a calling.
And how the time we got to it.
You try not to stress too much over this. This is good. Get mad, aren't you? Yeah.
As long as we don't get failed back to the first grade, I'll be happy.
Yeah, you won't get failed in the first grade. This is advancement right here. Just answer what you feel. That's pretty much the name of the game. Answer what you feel. What's that? If you don't know the words, you don't have to Google it. You just
put undecided on that.
yeah, undecided. Yeah, I'll figure them out sometime. Yeah. If you're done, go ahead and hold them up. Take them. Select them. Make sure everybody's name's on them. As a teacher, I always wondered why teachers said that. Now I know why you teachers say what you do. Boy, you got to make it count, don't you? Thank y'all.
That's it.
Thank you, sir. There's the freshers back there. Got candy, got brownies, got Chex Mix, got crackers, got Diet Soda Drop, fruit punch stuff, cola, water, coffee. Hopefully it's yours.
We staying all day?
Yeah, well, if you come, I figured,
I'll stay out this time.
I figured if you're gonna come, I'll give you some caffeine at least to maybe help. At any point in this, deal, if you can get up and go do whatever, that's fine. I want you to feel relaxed. Maybe candy will help, I don't know. Maybe
You have to go upstairs.
chocolate never hurts anything, I don't think. Yeah, there's ice. There's some ice in the freezer too. We got that from the Family Life Center a few minutes ago, so it's not 3 years old. Thank you, brother. All right. Thank you. Sam's are in. Those pretzel and peanut butter is about the best thing I've put my mouth out. Perfect snack food, junk food, whatever.
Are you recording this?
Yes, ma'am.
Like right now,
Yeah.
when I walk by.
It's
Here,
on
show your
tour.
plate, show
Yeah.
your plate to the camera.
Yeah. So in 25 years, somebody look back and like, brownies, pretzels, and peanut butter. Yeah. All that good stuff. All right, thank you. Go ahead and get her brownie now.
That way, not this way, though.
Contrary people. Yeah. I'm gonna be finishing up. All right, thank you, brother. Snowstorm.
It is supposed to snow.
I know,
I thought it was Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and further in is
Yeah, there's coffee in there, yeah. Make some coffee up, yes, sir.
Storms, storms tomorrow night, snow's Friday. Hang around a couple of days.
Get my bread and milk.
Yeah.
Make my milk sandwich beautiful.
Just come over to your house.
Does it make mine?
I got got a fireplace in the basement, and we'll roast marshmallows over natural gas. No,
No, they're good.
fine.
Yeah, they're good.
It's just the nursery that's not working right now. These are good.
All right, well, welcome to this journey that seems to occupy much of November. First of all, I want to say thank all of you for giving your time in this. I know that you probably, a lot of this is a mystery, and a lot of this you have a lot of questions about. What is this about? Well, sort of a twofold purpose. One, this is a part of my doctoral study process, implementing a project in the local church that is practical, yet theological, academic, something that hopefully will contribute to a field of study for others that come along. And the other part is just in doing ministry here, trying to determine really a couple different things. Is there an opportunity or is there a need in the church? And in that, just doing study of the church that I've done, we sort of arrived to this opportunity perhaps in the administrative field. Now what's interesting about that is, number one, I feel very incompetent in administrative work, which seems to be ironic that I'd be doing a project on that. And part of that is the reason why I'm doing that, because this process has helped me administratively think through things, even in the church, that perhaps need to be better. And so that's sort of one there. And then number two, I thought to myself, how many times have you ever been to a meeting where we talked about administration in the church? We talk about evangelism, we talk about discipleship, we talk, and of course, participated in programs, but I have never, in my ministry, time of ministry, ever sat down with a group of people and said, how are we doing administratively in the church? How is our structure? How is our organization? How is our planning? What is our plan? Are we the most effective that we could be? Is there any missing links in this big chain of ministry and doing things perhaps maybe a little bit more effective and efficient? And so here we are. And so I appreciate you helping out in this process. Again, as we do these little tests, pre-test, post-test, there's no right or wrong answer. This is going to be gauging essentially your feeling. And so my project title is simply this: Restoring Order, Developing and Implementing Administrative Resources and Policies for Beulah Baptist Church. Of course, I've got the PowerPoint here. You have to fill in the blanks, and we'll get to those in just a minute. But the project purpose is pretty simple, yet it's pretty comprehensive in the sense of thinking through and really needing your help. My purpose in this project is to develop a policy and procedure manual at Beulah Baptist Church by guiding a ministry leadership team through policy and procedure development, with the intent on the ministry leadership team approving a first draft policy and procedure manual. You'll have a copy of this in your binder. There's no fill in the blanks here, but again, this is the same thing I just said here. These are some of the objectives that I hope to accomplish in our time together. Okay, and a lot of this is going to be a process, so you're going to wonder, what is this about? I hope as we go through these sessions, those questions are answered. Okay, the number one of the main objectives is to increase all of our understanding about church administration, policy and procedure, and written documentation. What is this about? Are these important aspects of a church? Do we need these in the church? Do we not need these in the church? That's going to be what you're going to ultimately help me to determine in this project. So how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to examine various definitions of church administration. Is administration of the church different than the world? We're going to look at some policy and procedure development and written documentation. We're going to identify some key characteristics of policy and procedure in the church. I hope that we can formulate ideas that will challenge our tradition, yet they'll offer profitable solutions for our future. And then we're going to simply appraise our current condition within Beulah Baptist Church, especially regarding the administrative ministry. The second objective, what we're going to do when we learn all this, I hope that we can synthesize or bring together all this information and form a workable solution by collaborating with others in small and large group settings. So in the small group settings, we'll discuss positive changes that could be made regarding the administrative work within the church, or particularly within that context that you've been assigned. And then we're going to seek to compose workable solutions into a written document. So all of you have been assigned this subcommittee, and it's on the front of your binder and your little, the sheet on the front, the title page or whatever you want to call it. Many of you know that. There's ministry, mission, and finance, building and grounds, and personnel. Those are subcommittees, and that's going to be 4 people in that committee that will work together in a small group to help determine what could be better. Okay, so that's where that comes from. And then ultimately, at the end of our time together, the last few sessions, we're going to come back together in a large group and discuss what we discovered in the small group settings. Okay. And then lastly, the last objective, number 3, to develop and implement administrative resources and policies that are unique for Beulah Baptist Church. And so we're going to do that by evaluating our context of ministry, by oral discussion and written notes, and you're going to validate a written document that provides administrative resources and policies for Beulah Baptist Church. So you've already done the questionnaire. The training session dates. All of you in your folder should have a unique to you calendar, okay, or a meeting time. All of that is for you. All those that you see in your binder will be what you will be part of. Now, the subcommittee meeting is going to be different than, your friend to your right and left. All right, but those dates and those times will be when we meet. All right, and Lord willing, we'll meet right down here in the church basement every single time. Okay, but all these times we'll meet. So basically today, we're doing 2 sessions, not this weekend, but the next. We'll meet on Friday night. We'll have a meal together, and then we'll do basically what we're doing now, okay? And this is everybody's, okay? You probably can't see it up here because it's so small, but I've got every single meeting time of every single even subcommittee here, and there's 5 of them, obviously, so we got 5 groups, and 5 different meeting times for them. But then the last few sessions will be together. It'll be on Friday, November 30th, from 6:30 to 7:45, and then that'll be the preview of first draft of hopefully the policy and procedure manual that we have. And then, in that same night, if there's any revisions that perhaps a group wants to make to what's been brought forward, we'll have time to discuss that. And then that last time we're together will be a post-test, and then you will evaluate me, okay? I will hand you out an evaluation. You're going to evaluate how I conducted the meeting, my knowledge, my organization, all that stuff, okay? You'll evaluate me because that'll be crucial, for somebody to either get me real good or ask what I've done and could have done better. So you're going to help me in this process, hopefully to be a better person in the context of ministry. So our first training session, of course, is now. And we're going to start, and you'll have in your binder, fill in the blank. Now here's what I want to say about that. Our time, of course, is crunch. I got a lot of information. I've got all the fill in the blanks here on the screen. If you don't get them filled in, I don't want you to really fret about that near as much as just take in the content and what I'm discussing. I will get you to fill in the blanks, okay? But this is going to give you an opportunity to fill them in if you so desire. So I know some people like filling the blanks. Some people don't. Some of you are going to struggle with that. So I don't want to get caught up on, what's that fill in the blank, if it's really going to take us a long time in that. I'd rather you spend more time looking up here and thinking about the content and getting as much down as you can versus just trying to go through the futile effort of filling the blanks. Because I promise you, I will fill them in for you in your manual, okay? So we're going to define key terms. The key terms we're going to define is church administration, policy and procedure, and written documentation. Looky there. Here's another test you're going to take right now. This is a pre-test. Now, this is not extensive what you just did. This is 5 questions, all right? You'll do the same thing you just did. No reason to fret. No cheating. No plagiarism. Yeah. Be sure and put your name on it so we can identify that. It's a little lighter packet. It's just 5 questions. You didn't know y'all was going to get educated, did you? Or really messed up, maybe.
Yeah,
Now, one thing about it, we'll either figure it out or we'll try our best, well, I'll tell you that. All right. Thank you. So you take a few minutes to fill that out, and then we'll dive in. Pretty good stuff. When you get done, you hand it back to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. By the time I get done, Dar's gonna be like, I'm undecided on everything. All right. Thank you.
we're gonna have to separate now.
And there's more of those back there if y'all really want one that's got almonds or something.
Caleb's got them lined up over there.
Huh? Oh, I know.
I can't talk and not read.
Why not? We do it all the time, have them, so you pass them over.
Yeah.
Go loose stuff.
I know, getting them out today.
Yeah, went all the way out.
Nope.
I looked out for it.
Foreman?
Open up Friday.
That'd be all gonna be quiet there.
They're all good, they're all noticed.
Little.
Right there.
Where's my clicker?
There's one marker.
Lost his clicker, yeah. Again, if y'all need to get a drink or something, feel free to do that, all right?
Dark does not have.
So I've got the introduction here. This is a quote I discovered in my studies. By failing to plan, you plan to fail. And you just think about that for a second. By failing to plan, you plan to fail. When you think about church administration, I've got a few definitions here that we're going to look at and just think about church administration. Now, I told you I feel like my incompetence in administration. I've always looked at administration as sort of that hard thing that almost seems to be impossible. And, in church, especially in church setting, a limited time to do it. But I've really come to appreciate church administration by reading those that have been involved in church administration and those that have really developed a skill in it. The first one comes from a guy named Charles Tidwell. He wrote a book on church administration. This is what he says about church administration. He says church administration, listen to this, is a leadership which equips the church to be the church and to do the work of the church. It is the guidance provided by church leaders as they lead the church to use its spiritual, human, physical, and financial resources to move the church toward reaching its objectives and fulfilling its avowed purpose. It is, notice this word here, very important, I love this, it is enabling the children of God who comprise the church to become and to do what they can become and do by God's grace. Another definition by Robert Welch. Robert Welch wrote another book called Church Administration, a little different subtitle in it. But here's what he says about church administration. He said it is the art and science of four things: of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling the work of others to achieve defined objectives and goals. So he says it is planning, it's organization, or organizing, leading, and controlling the work of others to achieve defined objectives and goals. Robert Dale said this, it's the middle bullet there. He said church administration is ministry, not methods. He said it's people, it's not paperwork. It's human processes, not inhumane policies. It's management, not manipulation. It's interesting, isn't it? Church administration is ministry, not methods. It's people, not paperwork. It's human processes, not inhumane policies. It's management, not manipulation. And notice what the Apostle Paul said to the church at Corinth. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 28. He said, God has appointed these in the church. He said, first apostles, that would be like Peter, we talked about him this morning. He said, second, prophets. Third, teachers. After that, there's miracles. Then there are gifts of healing. There's helps. And notice the word he uses here, administrations. And then variety of tongues, languages. So I think it's important that we think about, obviously, first of all, what's the Bible have to say about this? And the Apostle Paul uses administrations in 1 Corinthians, specifically chapter 12, in those gifting chapters, to really bring out that this is a vital role. Administrator comes from the Greek word kubernesis. Kubernesis. And this is what that means, just for the sake of simplicity. It means helmsman. So a helmsman is one that's going to guide the ship. A helmsman, even in the first century, of course, it'd be a lot more common then than perhaps it is now, but a helmsman is going to guide the ship. Now, let's think about a church for a moment. Let's think about Beulah Baptist Church. If there is no guidance, if there is no helmsman or group of leadership that helps guide our church, when conflict comes, when opportunities come, will we fully be able to seize our destination? A helmsman was vital in guiding a ship because a helmsman could look ahead and see, here's conflict, we need to prepare. There's our destination, let's go this way. And of course, it was an ongoing struggle for the helmsman. So when the Apostle Paul wrote administrations, he uses that word, which brings emphasis to the fact that he was thinking about this idea that, when you guide the church, you need a collective, I believe, and we're going to see this as we go, the scriptures even talk about this, you need a collective group that will help equip the entire church to guide themselves towards the destination. Because if you don't, what's going to happen naturally to the ship that has no helmsman? It's going to crash. It's going to falter. You think about turning in circles. How many times in church does every one of those things happen? We either crash because we didn't fully prepare. We go in circles because there's no structure, there's no plan, there's no organization, there's no team of people looking out on the horizon and saying, this is where we need to go. That's the destination. What you need is every one of these definitions that we've talked about is all about a process. It's all about people. And it's all about guiding a church in the right direction. So you got in your notes a couple blanks. Here's what I arrived at as I've been studying. Church administration in the church, it's two things. It's both a noun and it's a verb. A noun, of course, means it is a thing. It is, of course, it could be a ministry, it could be a committee. I mean, some churches have pastor of administration, believe it or not. There are people in the church that's their job. They get paid to do that. They administrate the church. Of course, we all look and think that's the bigger church. But as we're going to discover, it doesn't only need to exist in the bigger churches. Smaller churches need administrators too. We just perhaps don't have the financial funds to support a pastor of administration or whatever. But it's also a verb. A verb is something, we're doing it. It needs to be something that we're ongoingly thinking about, planning through, praying through, and making it certainly a spiritual journey in the work of the church. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I had a planning down here a few months ago with evangelism. I've talked to some of you about discipleship, but I've never sat down. This is the first time I've ever sat down with a group of people. And trust me, I know because I've read the books and I've nodded off. This is not the most exciting thing you've ever done. But I'll tell you, a helmsman sitting in the ship spends many days just sailing smoothly. But when he's needed, he earns every penny that's given to him. Because he becomes a point of emphasis in leadership, and he has a vital role. And this is the first time I've ever sat down with a group of people and talked about, I know, it's not really exciting. That's why I brought brownies and candy and coffee and Diet Sun Drop. If I need to bring the real Sun Drop next time, I will. It's not the most exciting thing, I know. But I think it's a vital work in the church. It's a ministry in the church. Just like we would say evangelism, just like we would say discipleship. So it's a noun, and it's also a verb. In your notes there's a Christian perspective of administration. There's a Christian perspective of administration in the church, Beulah Baptist Church. Our administration needs to primarily focus on transformation. Everybody say transformation.
Transformation.
Right, because the church is not a business. The church is not a building. The church is not, a complex. The church is organic. The church is about people. That is what the church is. When the Bible talks about the church, the Bible talks about the living body of Christ. So because of that, we need to think about administration in terms of transformation, It's transformative. It's something that we journey through together, but we also take responsibility of as a group of people. And we even do the hard work. So I've got really 5 points here under this transformation. Administration ultimately is ministry. Number 1, it's ministry. Number 2, administration is servanthood. Administration is servanthood. Administration, as we sing to the church at Corinth, it's a spiritual gift. Okay? It's a spiritual gift. So it's ministry, it's servanthood, it's a spiritual gift, and this is what I really think the emphasis in administration is. It's about stewardship. It's about stewardship. Beulah Baptist Church has been gifted with a lot of great people. You're included in that. And stewardship is more than just money. This means that the leadership in the church, those that are active, okay, those that are involved in the ministry of the church, and all of you are, the leadership is to manage all of God's resources so that we can glorify Him most effectively and efficiently. So stewardship means that the leadership of the church is to manage all of God's resources. Everything that we have, finances, buildings, programs, everything that we have in place now. How can we steward that most effectively? You probably heard this before. The enemy of great is good. The enemy of great is good. We can be good at a lot of things. But I believe your heart is, how can we be great at it? How can we be as great and most effective as we can? How do we journey in this without turning a blind eye and thinking about our future and where we're headed? So I think it's about being effective and also being efficient. And so I've got this question. What does this mean for you as you sit here today? What does this mean for you in the context of administration? And then lastly, administration is spiritual. It's spiritual. It's a spiritual dynamic, and I've already discussed that. This is some interesting things, and I really enjoyed discovering this. This is probably a whole project in and of itself, but there are some common misconceptions regarding church administration. There are some misconceptions regarding church administration. Number 1, there are some faulty concepts of church administration. There are some faulty concepts of church administration. Typically, the faulty concepts of church administration are this. It's viewed as pushing paper. Administration is about making copies. Administration is about dealing with troublesome equipment. And typically, it's viewed as something that keeps them from ministering in main areas. So people have a faulty concept of administration. I don't want to do administration in the church. Administration is about copies and copy machines and pushing paper and, the ABC. So I don't want to do that. Number 2, the second misconception is equating administration with poor administration. Equating administration with poor administration. Some of us, all of us perhaps, have seen administration done wrongly. And whenever it's done wrongly, we automatically assume we don't want to do it at all. We don't want to do it at all. We don't want to think about policies. We don't want to think about procedures. We don't want to think about how being effective in administration, because there's an awful distaste in our mouth about this. It's hard to imagine a ministry that is successful when people are always laboring with their sleeves rolled up over a copy machine. We're thinking, how's ministry going to be effective whenever you're making copies? So poor administration sometimes, and again, we've all seen that probably just do it out in the church. We've probably seen that in businesses before. And so we just think it's no good. Number 3, I think this is probably one of the most, elevated misconception is many people just prefer spiritual things. I want to pray, I want to evangelize, I want discipleship, leave administration for, quote unquote, somebody else. And we perhaps, all of us, maybe we haven't been prepared biblically on administration. Maybe we haven't looked at it in a transformational aspect. Maybe we haven't foreseen the positive nature that it can bring, so we just want to do the spiritual thing. Number 4, we reject the executive image. We don't want to be the executive image in the church because, after all, again, we're about ministry. So I don't want to be that church that just, has this edge to them, again, is always about administration, but never about anything else. Number 5, unfortunately, we have attitudes towards ourselves and others. When you view others or yourself in the wrong light, especially regarding administrative work, you can neglect administration. Can others handle a task? Should we engage the church in such a lofty matter because, after all, they really will not understand or catch on? Many times that is a big hindrance. We don't think anybody else can do it, so we don't do it at all. And we underestimate the power of delegation, of delegating administrative work onto others because we don't think they can handle that work. And so we've got to really, I think, have an environment, even a failure if need be, in administration, so that we can all learn together and how we can be most effective. So some have an inflated ego problem. That's a misconception in the church. Some believe they are above the mundane task of administration. I'm above doing all that work. I'm called to do something else. Number 7, a low opinion of others. A low opinion of others. That goes along with pretty much number 5. A misconception of administration is hiding in the busy work. In an effort to avoid the excellence in administrative work in the church, many will hide in the busy work and want to receive the accolades for doing the hard work. So we're going to hide in doing a lot of busy work so we don't have to face the more important work. And as we're going to discover in this process, I know some of you think, what's going on here? I hope this will be a process. We unfold where we are at Beulah Baptist Church. We got to face this. I think we got to face reality. Do we sit down now and do this hard work, even of policy and procedures? Or do we continue to hide in doing all kinds of work in the church and fail to address what's going to help us to be more effective? And so we can do a lot of busy work. Whatever program we have, whether it be Awana, whether it be Upward, whether it be Outreach, whether it be discipleship, whether it be Sunday school. I mean, I've done it, and I feel convicted often about this. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm doing a lot of busy work, maybe receiving a lot of accolades, but is there any time we can sit down and really think about it, explore it? Are we being effective? Are we being lawful? Are we doing things the right way? So, number 9, some people just want to do everything. The Superman status is what I call it. You want to do everything, and church administration is not about doing everything. And then lastly, view of persons and the church. And here's what I mean by that. Do we really believe that people are made in the image of God? Because if we believe that people are made in the image of God, and if we believe the church is to be transformational, then church administration works its way in that. So whether you're talking about ministry, whether you're talking about missions, whether you're talking about finance, personnel, building, and grounds, how can these things be used for transformational purposes? Okay? So the second big point, after defining church administration, defining policy and procedure. Defining policy and procedure. These guys here, Michael Anthony and James Eastep, they are church administrators. For the sake of this project, this will be the definition that I prefer and will point to often in the context of defining policy and procedure. This is what they say about policy and procedure. The policy is an explicit statement of belief and or attitude that's intended to shape and control ministry action. It's an explicit statement. Explicit. And then the procedure is an explicit statement of the appropriate and or requisite progression of actions that must be taken in order to implement a stated policy. And you'll see here, I've got underlined explicit. There's a reason for that. Because a lot of our church administration is implicit, which means this: vague. He said, she said. When did they say it? We don't know. Well, why do we believe that way? Well, that's what we've always done. And I'm sorry, but I can't accept that in the context of being most effective. I believe we need to have a question of the why. Why we do that? I mean, that's fine, but let's think about why we're doing what we're doing. We have a lot of implicit things, not only in the church, but in our life. And when I think about administration, specifically policy and procedure, I'm looking at explicit. Okay? I'm looking at explicit because explicit means this. You know it, I know it, and we've all voted to agree on it. It's in black and white. There's no question. We point somebody to it. We know where to access it. That's the bottom line. Here are a couple more definitions. Stephen Page is the guru on policy and procedure. If anybody wants to know, I have a 4-part volume. He's a business administrator. It has nothing to do with the church. He wrote strictly on business administration. He said this about policy and procedure. He said it's a general strategy or purpose. He said procedure is a plan of action for achieving a policy. The second little block here, Bob Welch, he's a church administrator. He said regarding policy and procedure, it's a general statement that relates the church's position on a particular subject. So it's a general statement that relates the church's position on a particular subject. And procedure, while the policies are broad statements of principle that chart a course of action, procedures are the oars in the water. So he says the oars in the water are the procedures that help the policy move forward and makes it understandable to the people. And then lastly here, we're going to define written documentation. The reason we're doing church administration, policy and procedure, and written documentation, because the project, you'll hear me talk about those things over and over again. And obviously, most of you know this by now, they all relate into where we're going in the project, okay? You got written documentation, policy and procedure, explicitly in the written documentation, and all of that is under the umbrella of the ministry of church administration. So a written, accessible document that's printed out for the membership to operate by, that, number one, forces the church to think through how they operate. A written, accessible document that's printed out for the membership to operate by, that forces the church to think through how they operate. Number two, a written document is going to provide transparency as well as accountability. And then lastly, it will protect the church. I don't think any of you have to be reminded of the times we live in. They are different than they've ever been before. Just talked to a local church that had a preschool just the other day. A kid fell, and it was reported, no harm, no foul, nothing. The kid fell, and the state shut the preschool down. But listen to this. A lawyer of that child contacted the pastor and told the pastor that he was not to talk to this family that was injured. And there would be a strike against him. So now, not only is the preschool shut down, but now the church can't minister to the family that's hurt because the law has stepped in. Who's right? Who's wrong? And does the church have any stance on how you're going to operate through that? We're going to discuss. There's no way you can cover everything. But I use that as an example to say it's good for us, I believe, to think on an ongoing basis, are we protected in the membership of the church? Or are we just flying by the seat of our pants, not thinking about implications of doing why we do what we do, how we do it? And when you have a written document, it's going to force you to outline, okay, this is going to give me accountability and protection, and we're all going to be better because of it. So that if anybody ever does come on us, or even within the church, we'll be able to better handle it, okay? And so Michael Atherton, and we'll be discussing more of this, but he says this: writing out your policies is only the first step in this journey. Having policies but choosing to ignore them, having policies but choosing to ignore them is worse than never developing policies to begin with. So written documentation is really two faces to that. You need to have them, but when you have them, you better follow them. I just met with, again, a group of pastors the other day. We was talking about this. I was picking their brain, of course, because I just nerd out on stuff like that, especially I'm trying to learn. And, you know, a pastor of a very prominent church in the area, very educated, I'd go to him for help above any other. He told me, he said, Ian, we live in a very happy world now. It doesn't matter where you're at as a church, you better watch out. You better be thinking through these things. And he said, by the way, and I don't mean to scare you, but whatever you do, you're always going to be wrong. By a lawyer, you're always going to be wrong. If somebody trips and falls coming up the steps, they're going to come and say, why didn't you have this marked out so they wouldn't fall? If you do have it marked out, they're going to say, why didn't you fix that at some point? There's always going to be something that you're going to have to face as a church. And so we have a lot of moving parts here at Beulah Baptist Church, no doubt about it. And again, even in this project, we don't have the time to think about everything. But we can think about the big things. And that's where I hope to go. So that puts us at about 3:20. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass out a post test. All right? The same thing that you took, you're going to take it again. And then we're going to have a break, and we'll be back in here about 3:40 or so. How's that? Let me pass that out. That lined up there. And again, if you didn't have that, my plan is for you just to let me hold on to your binder unless you want to take it home. I'll keep up with it so that we have it, and I can go through and give you any of your fill in the blanks that you need before we meet again, so your conscience is intact and you got OCD or anything. Yeah, that's all right. When you get done with that, I'll collect those.
Bobby said the policy was I had to do a check mark.
Check mark, and you done blew it. See, that's what I'm talking
My
about.
check marks are backwards, so I.
So you are reading between the lines, you know. But what's the policy on the marking of the boxes?
X of the check.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you. If you didn't sign in when you come in, if you don't mind signing in there on the lectern, slide on, so everybody's accounted for. Thank you. Awesome. You made brownie. There's some old ice cream up there.
Chocolate with almonds.
Probably about the same line as
Let's get mine.
chili. Oh, okay, thank you, appreciate it.
No, I don't.
We've got to find out about that Hobby Lobby thing.
I had that, but I think,
I'm gonna have to do probably.
Those curse ones, bathroom still out?
Up here.
Yeah, just the nursery, one thing messed up. You're good to go.
no.
We have water here.
I know what, but I took it out of the checkbook this morning when I got home.
How many did y'all have yesterday, Bro Scott?
I don't know, we ended up with about
Hobby
125.
Lobby and then the
Total,
sprinkler.
sure they can ball.
Floor
You'll still have about 10
orange
to 20 more
and
show up.
Yeah, probably another 10.
That's good.
And I don't think I paid you for that stuff, so.
About like that. I think you said they had 120 something ball players last year in about.
See, there were 4 Hobby Lobby receipts.
I mean, the last two were probably big, because that's when I got stuff for the lights and the new stuff up. But